Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 1,000 subscribers and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy the content, hit that subscribe button right now. And if you really want to make my day, smash that thumbs up before you even watch the rest of this, because trust me, what I'm about to tell you is going to blow your mind. Denver, we need to talk. Because in the span of about 2 hours, the Broncos front office pulled off a move that half of you didn't see coming, and at the exact same time, an entire fan base lost its collective mind over 4 words posted on social media. 2 completely separate stories, one wild afternoon. And I am about to break down both of them. Because buckle up, Broncos Country, this is going to be a ride. Let's start with the signing, because I called this one. Not to toot my own horn, but I literally told you in our last video to keep an eye out for a center signing, and wouldn't you know it, 2 hours later, boom, it happened. The Denver Broncos have placed center Mike Dieter on season-ending injured reserve with a quad injury, and in the same breath, they've signed a new body to Mile High. His name is Lecitus Smith, and if you're sitting there scratching your head going, who? Don't worry, most of the fan base is right there with you. But stick with me, because there's more to this story than a random practice squad name. Here's the thing about Lecitus Smith. This is a guy who has been absolutely everywhere in the NFL. 6 different teams have had him on their roster at some point. 6, that is a well-traveled football player. He originally came into the league as a 6th-round pick out of Virginia Tech, drafted by the Arizona Cardinals back in 2022. And for those wondering if he's got any actual game tape, he does. He dressed for 19 games during his career and started in 4 of them. That might not sound like much, but in a league where teams are desperate for linemen who at least understand what it's like to snap the ball under pressure, that experience matters. Now let's get one thing straight right away, because I don't want anybody getting overly excited here. This is not a 53-man roster lock. This is not some secret superstar the Broncos have been hiding. This is depth. This is insurance. This is a front office being smart and making sure that if something goes sideways again, they are not left scrambling. Because let's be honest, injuries at the center position can absolutely wreck an offensive line's rhythm, and Denver just lost one of their bodies for the entire season. You do not want to be caught short-handed in August with 0 answers. So who exactly is on the center depth chart right now? As of this very moment, the healthy centers taking reps are Calvin Throckmorton, Gavin Ortega, and now Lecitus Smith. Yes, I know what some of you are thinking. What about Luke Wattenberg? What about Alex Forsyth? Don't panic. Both of those guys are considered day 1 starters once the regular season rolls around. They are simply working their way back to full health, and all signs point to them being ready to roll by week 1. But for the rest of training camp, and especially for these preseason games, these are the 3 names you need to know at the center position. And here's a little nugget that actually gives me some optimism about this signing. Back in his final season at Virginia Tech, Lecitus Smith posted a 73.4 PFF grade, which at the time made him the 4th highest graded guard in the entire AC. That is not nothing. That tells you the traits were there. The production was there. Sometimes a player's NFL journey just takes a few detours before things click. And maybe, just maybe, Denver is the place where it finally comes together. Or maybe he's simply here to take reps in camp and keep the offensive line from having to scrimp on bodies. Either way, expect to see him suited up as early as tomorrow, and if you want to watch it all go down live, we've got a watch party starting at 5 o'clock Central, 4 o'clock Mountain. So make sure you are subscribed and drop a comment letting me know you'll be pulling up. All right, now let's get into the juicy part, because this next story is the one that has absolutely set Broncos Twitter, or should I say Broncos X, on fire. It all started, as these things often do, with one simple, harmless-looking tweet. A fan account, Danny Broncos, asked a completely innocent question. Which tight ends are looking good in camp? Simple enough, right? Except a Broncos media member, Rachel Vigil, responded with 2 words that somehow launched an entire fan base into a full-blown crisis. Her response? No one. Followed by a string of blank-faced emojis. That is it. That is all it took. One tweet, 2 words, a couple of emojis, and suddenly Broncos fans everywhere are convinced the sky is falling. One fan, going by the handle Zach Nix for 6, put it perfectly when he said this happens every single offseason. The tight end room struggles, the team re-signs everybody, and then here we are again in preseason wondering why the tight ends still look shaky. Other fans piled on, saying tight ends and middle linebackers are cursed positions for this franchise, that it happens every single year, and that the front office refuses to fix it. Now look, I understand where this frustration is coming from. I really do. History is not exactly on the tight end room's side here. Over the last several seasons, this position group has not exactly been the strength of the Denver Broncos roster. So when fans see a tweet like that, their brains immediately jump to the worst-case scenario, because that is what years of disappointment will do to you. But I am here today to be the voice of reason, and I need you to hear me out on this one, because I think everybody is jumping the gun in a massive way. Here is what nobody seems to be talking about. We have never, not once, watched Davis Webb call plays in a live football setting. Not a single snap. This is a brand new offensive mind running the show, and we are already out here writing eulogies for a position group before he has called a single real play. That is wild to me. How do we know Davis Webb isn't going to completely change how this tight end room is utilized? We don't. Nobody does. Not until we actually watch football. So let's talk about the guy who's going to be at the center of this entire storyline. Tight end number 1 on the depth chart, Evan Engram. Last season was a bit of a letdown for Ingram in Denver. There is no sugarcoating that. But I've got some numbers for you that I think are going to completely change how you view what's coming this year. Because it looks like this coaching staff is planning to use him in a very different way. Before we get into those stats, though, I've got to give a shout out to the folks making this video possible, our friends over at Prize Picks. And listen, tonight is actually the perfect night to get in on the action, because there are games on the slate you can build lineups around right now. I already told you my plays. I've got Denver's own signal caller going over on passing yards this season. Feels like a lock to me. I'm also riding with Jalen Waddle going over on receiving yards, because 850 yards feels a little disrespectful for a guy with his talent, and I'm pairing that with Bijan Robinson going over on his total. Because with Bill Callahan now calling the shots up front in Atlanta, I think that offensive line is going to be flat-out nasty this year, and Bijan is in line for a monster season. If you want to copy that exact lineup, you can follow me right inside the app using the new social feeds feature and copy it in one single click, or just build your own however you like. Either way, download the Prize Picks app, sign up using code MA, that's code MA, play your first $5 lineup, and if that lineup hits, you get $150 in bonus lineups. I'll drop all of that in the comments and description down below. Prize Picks, it is good to be right. Okay, back to Evan Engram, because this is where things get really interesting. Head coach and play caller Bo Nix's staff have talked about wanting Ingram involved differently this year. And offensive coordinator Bo, who is the one actually drawing up the plays, explained exactly why. In his own words, last year Ingram was used more as a vertical passing threat out wide. But this year the plan is to get him in the box, meaning lined up in line at the traditional tight end spot, and use him as a blocker to help open things up elsewhere in the offense. He specifically said that blocking element is part of Ingram's game that hasn't gotten to show off, because he was constantly rotating on and off the field. And that quote lines up perfectly with a statistic I dug into that honestly shocked me. Last season, Evan Engram's snap split was 85% pass plays to just 15% run plays. Let that sink in for a second. 85% of the time Engram was on the field, it was a passing play. That is basically a flashing neon sign to opposing defenses. And on top of that, he was only on the field for 42% of Denver's total offensive snaps last year. So do the math with me here. If a defense saw Evan Engram lined up, they could be almost certain a pass was coming. That is about as telegraphed as it gets in this league, and it is exactly the kind of predictability that smart defensive coordinators feast on. So what does that tell us? It tells us that last year, the vast majority of Engram's snaps came from the slot or split out wide as what they call an F tight end, rather than the traditional inline Y tight end spot. And if this coaching staff wants to flip that ratio and get him in line more often, the obvious question becomes, is that actually a good idea? Was Engram even effective playing in line last year? And this is where the story takes a twist that I think a lot of casual fans are going to find surprising. Because as much criticism as Engram takes for his blocking, the numbers say he was actually significantly better as an inline tight end. Let's look at the evidence. I pulled his 3 highest inline snap percentage games from last season. Against Green Bay, he played in line 60% of his snaps. Against Dallas, 57.1%. Against Kansas City, 52%. Now let's line those up with his corresponding PIF grades for those exact games. Green Bay wasn't anything special, sitting at 57.1. But Dallas, 76.7. Kansas City, 70.8. Do you see the pattern forming here? There appears to be a real, tangible correlation between Evan Engram playing more traditionally in line and him actually performing at a much higher level. So maybe, just maybe, this new offense under Davis Webb isn't going to be the disaster that panicked fans are already predicting after one blunt tweet. Maybe there's an element of surprise coming. Maybe Denver is about to unlock a version of Evan Engram we haven't fully seen yet, borrowing concepts that feel like they're pulled straight from offensive minds like Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan, and Ben Johnson. Davis Webb is calling these plays for a reason. He has a vision. And I think the very least we owe this coaching staff is the chance to actually watch it play out on a football field before we start declaring the tight end room a lost cause. Now, does that mean we just have to accept mediocrity if it doesn't work out? Absolutely not. If 3 preseason games and a couple of regular season contests go by and this tight end room still looks lost, then yes. As a fan base, you have every right to voice that frustration loudly. Nobody is saying blind loyalty here. But burying a position group before a single snap of actual game action under a brand new play caller? That's not fair analysis, that's panic, and panic makes for bad takes. We are about to get our first real look at all of this tomorrow, when the Broncos take on the Falcons at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. This is the moment the theories get tested. This is where we find out if Evan Engram really is about to have a bounce-back season, whether that new center depth actually matters, and whether this Davis Webb offense is the real deal or just another chapter in a frustrating pattern. Tune in, because we are going to be live at 5 o'clock Central, 4 o'clock Mountain Time, breaking down every single snap as it happens. And here's the fun part. If you're pulling up for that watch party, we are giving away a Jalen Waddle jersey, a real jersey to a real fan just for being part of this community. That is exactly why hitting that subscribe button matters so much right now. We are chasing down 1,000 subscribers, and every single one of you watching this video is one step closer to getting us there. So if this breakdown gave you something to think about, if you learned something new about that center depth chart or that Evan Engram usage data, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button, smash the like icon, and drop a comment down below telling me who you think steps up as tight end 1 when the Broncos and Falcons kick off tomorrow. Are you team panic or team patience on this tight end room? Let me know. Until next time, Broncos Country, this has been the Broncos Breakdown, presented by Prize Picks. Be cool.